Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Jeep Journals. Today I want to provide you with a approximately 3-year update of one of my prized possessions, the Benchmade Foray, which is a gold class knife that is quite impressive, quite amazing. It's got details on it that are unlike many other knives. As you can see, and I'm trying to hold it at just the right angle so you can see, it's got mother of pearl inlays, which I think are gorgeous, and it's got adornments like these thumb studs and spacers that are a unique color. And even though those pops of color are quite bright, this knife I think is very classy. You can see on the clip the Benchmade butterfly logo, trying to get it at the right angle so you can see that. The reflection has to be just right. There you go. See that butterfly logo? I'm quite pleased with seeing imagery of nature, and this knife reminds me completely of nature. You can see the carbon fiber scales, and all of this whole utility is quite amazing to handle. Now, I looked up the definition of the word saber, and you can look it up as well, and that's why I decided to title this clip My Favorite Lightsabers. This particular saber is probably my favorite of all of my lightsabers. It's unique, it's amazing, it's super sharp, and for every aspect that I've used it for, it has served me quite well. It's very sharp. Just for comparison, I'm going to be including a few pictures just for side-by-side comparison. But in some particular instances, I do not want to carry this knife only because of the mother of pearl inlays and the amount of force when I'm squeezing between slot canyons or sliding down slick rock washes. I always feel a little bit concerned that my actual body weight may press against this knife and cause some issues over the course of time. And so I have a backup. This knife is called the Bugout, and it is slightly slimmer than my Foray. It is much lighter weight. It's also made by Benchmade. This is my dark side lightsaber, if you can call it that. All in all, I really wanted to tell you I've had this knife for 3 years. I got it in approximately March of 2018. I do see a little bit of wear on the thumb studs, I don't know if that's what you call them actually. I'm trying to focus on them so you can see. A little bit of wearing on the anodized portion of the thumb studs. You might be able to see that they're slightly different color than the spacers that are in here. However, they were slightly different color than the spacers to begin with on this particular knife. I've ordered 2 of this knife. One was as a gift, and in the second case, that lightsaber had the same exact color thumb studs as the spacers. So with all of everything I'm saying, this is basically a fancy lightsaber. It's something that a Jedi would carry. Someone who wanted to wield the saber without causing any kind of destruction to themselves or to anything else. I use this knife to cut things peacefully and accurately, and it's cut everything from fruit to cord to cables to even myself when I mishandled this in one particular instance. With that in mind, I want to present an aspect that these are in fact cutting utilities that we can become very familiar with in order to minimize the likelihood of causing some kind of an accident. I've recorded a few videos where I've been walking and talking about these items. That's not entirely safe. I recognize that, and I wanted to reiterate that safety comes first, no matter what. And in fact, I would go so far as to say that in the case of any lightsaber, any saber, we want to take extreme caution and have utmost respect for what those tools are capable of. Here you see a skull on this one's pocket clip. These are capable of causing all kinds of injury, up to and including things that make us think about certain elements of nature that sometimes we don't really want to discuss with one another. So how do I feel after 3 years of ownership of this knife? I feel like if I lost it, I would be extremely sad and I would want to purchase it again. So that's how I feel about this thing. This is an everyday carry knife that I believe was made for me. It's interesting that the knife is called the Foray. My name is Ray. Once again, thank you so much for viewing the adventures here on the Jeep Journal. If you haven't already, I hope that you click on subscribe. Feel free to share these clips if they're interesting to you, and definitely click on like or comment and add something to the conversation. All in all, what I'm doing is trying to showcase just a journey here. Today I'm out here in Floresville, Texas. I visited the house that my father formerly lived in. It's been pretty much destroyed by fire, and I visited the grave sites of my grandparents on the same side of my family, cleaned the grave up. There were a lot of stickers. I don't know if you can see, I have quite a few little punctures in my hand from pulling the weeds. And you know, I'm not quite sure how things work in the afterlife, but I am sure that when I was there talking to the sites where my grandparents were laid to rest, there was a bell on a nearby gravesite that rang out a couple of times when there was very little breeze happening. And so I felt like I wasn't quite alone. A lot of times I feel like when I'm talking with someone, even when they're right there, I feel a little bit alone. Have you ever had that feeling? Like someone's not quite listening to you, not quite paying attention? All along the way, when I'm on this journey, as I've got my eyes on the ground, in the air, basically just looking around in amazement, I find things in my journey. On some of my hikes, I find some of the most amazing things. For an example, this ring. This ring is something I found on one of my journeys. If it looks familiar to you, if you're able to identify it, please reach out to me. I found this in a specific location closer to my hometown, and that's pretty much all I want to say about that item for now. But it led me to have a conversation about looking around, looking on the ground, watching where I'm stepping, and taking care of things. This knife, like I say, I've had it for 3 years. It's got a little bit of wear on it, but it doesn't look like it's been mishandled. And the wear mostly is on the part that was always outside of my own pocket. So what does that mean? What it means to me is not everyone may need a lightsaber of this fancy attitude. However, at the very minimum, I believe that a trusty, serviceable, long-lived item that can be passed down, or at least cared for enough to be regarded to where it's handled and appreciated and cared for, is something that we can all consider when it comes to our cutting utensils. This particular knife, it's valuable enough that I can't just go out and buy this every day. It's also at a price range where I know that I could work extra hours to obtain another one if I really wanted to, if I lost this one. And it's also something that when I got it, I had the respect to keep it in my consideration to where I took care of it. Now, some people can have a whole household full of belongings and quite literally burn the house down because they don't really care for it. So what is everything I'm saying trying to lead to? What is it that I'm trying to explain? Well, as I was at my grandparents' grave sites, I saw 2 caracaras flying around in the air. I saw a dragonfly. I heard the bell ring when I was asking questions. having conversations with people who aren't there. And I guess what I'm saying is, I think we're all there. You know, there's some people who really aren't there, even when you're there in person with them, as I've mentioned in the past. And there are some people who are with us always, looking out for our well-being. So I'm looking out for your well-being. Whoever owns this ring, it was cracked on the back. It's been repaired now. It's a gorgeous ring. I call it my trail treasure. This to me is a treasured item. It's an heirloom. If I had children, I would probably be willing to bet that I would be passing this down to them whenever that time came. In the meanwhile, to make sure that I keep it in that condition, I have a backup knife, which is dimensionally quite similar to my Foray Gold class. I've reviewed it a little bit differently in 3 different segments. In one segment, I talked about the packaging that it came in and some of the extras that I may not want to accumulate and continue to accumulate as someone who would be a collector of these items. I'm not a collector of these items. I'm just someone who uses these items in my everyday carry arsenal. As I carry this more and more frequently, which is again pretty much every day, I find different uses for it. Sometimes you'll have a loose thread on a garment. Sometimes you'll need to open packaging that's not quite adult friendly, like maybe it's child proof and adult proof. Have you ever run into packaging like that? This knife is so sharp that it can help you open things that maybe you weren't really knowing that you were going to encounter that day. I've used this to cut fruit, different foods, and all in all, I just rinse the blade, dry it off, and put my lightsaber back away so that I can use it again later on down the road. I hope that that explains how I've enjoyed this knife over the course of 3 years of ownership. I hope that you're watching the Jeep Journals with a little bit of understanding that this isn't my natural role. I'm not trying to sell you any items. I'm not trying to, what is it that I'm trying to say? There's a bigger story, I think, that we're talking about here when we talk about wellness and conservation. Wellness and conservation is something that I've had many people tell me that they can't discuss with me. And so I'm using this channel. You can see with the amount of likes and subscribes and shares that have happened here that basically maybe this isn't my gig. So why am I doing? Why do I continue to do it? I'm telling a story of nature and wildlife. I'm sitting here in a park in Floresville, and I can hear some of the bugs all around me. The birds are coming out, they're happy. I don't see a lot of lizards or any of those things. The pecans are falling from the pecan trees. Leaves are falling like it's the early onset of autumn. And at the same time, I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that just a few years prior, we had quite a few more visitors in terms of the diversity of wildlife. So why do I continue talking about all these? Did you see the bird fly by? It's almost like confirmation. When I talk about important subjects, you'll see things fly over. I mention those things quite often. Sometimes I say that the words that I'm saying are inspired by a higher power. A lot of the things I say can either turn you off to what I'm saying, or they can help you to understand that I have a bigger picture objective that I'm covering. And really, I'm just showing this lightsaber to carry a conversation forward that isn't quite as cutting as the stories that we're seeing on the media so far, but maybe they should be, and maybe someone has to take action with their lightsaber and somehow battle the unseen in peace. There aren't a lot of topics that I can touch on with some of our adults that leave them comfortable, but this safe topic where I'm talking about a knife that I enjoy and showing you another knife that I have so that I can carry it when I'm not carrying the knife that has these mother of pearl inlays. When I talk about how light this is and how many years these things can be in operation. When I talk about companies such as Benchmade who have a Life Sharp service where you can send that item in for lifetime servicing. When I talk about sustainability, when I talk about supporting local, when I talk about eating fruits and vegetables and improving our own health, all I'm talking about really is care. And when we care for one another, we can hear what one another is saying, we can understand the quirks that we encounter when we talk to those people that we enjoy talking with. And more often than not, we can have a conversation that goes in two directions. In this particular case, when I look at this feed, and when I look at the level of participation, I start wondering, does anyone actually click on subscribe when you ask them to click on subscribe? Does anyone share videos that they find interesting? I tried to share a variety of nature clips, gear reviews, outtakes, where things happen that I wasn't expecting. I've tried to share a lot of different things to see what is it that someone likes and enjoys and shares and reciprocates conversation with. And in a lot of cases, I feel like I'm failing. And so since I'm failing this audience right now, I want to ask you, what would you like to see more of? What topic should I touch on? And how do I focus these conversations in a way where we can hear one another and discuss things with one another? Right now, so far, what I'm encountering is that the more I discuss basic topics with people, the more I hear from more and more people, you're too much. You know, some people can't hear you. This is what they'll tell me. You're too much. Some people can't hear you because there's too many words that you're saying. Your topics are too broad. They're so spread across the board that maybe the topics are unrelated. I would like to say that the topics that I'm talking with are as related as even the passers-by who we encounter on a daily basis. You know, we're all friends, we're all working through these things together, we're all trying to figure out how to rebuild the house that our fathers are burning down around us. We're all trying to figure out how to tend to those yards that need to be tended to, the grave sites, the sites of the living. We're all trying to figure out how to get through these times. And we're also all running into situations where people are consistently talking about how sick they are of certain things. I'm sick of this, I'm sick of that. Well, that's great. What are you happy about? For me, I like carrying this lightsaber of this era. This lightsaber is one of the coolest things that I've ever carried as an EDC. It's something that you absolutely need to be responsible to carry. You can't just carry around a super sharp blade and not expect to get cut. I've been cut by blades that I've handled, including this one, from mishandling it. And these kind of things are occurrences that will continue to happen over and over when we don't have the proper care and consideration for them. So for this particular knife, after 3 years of ownership, I would say I would do it all over again. And based on some of the circumstances that have occurred, I have 2 lightsabers on me right now to show you. And I hope you guys get a kick out of some of the stuff that I'm sharing with you. Sometimes I feel like maybe this is going to be something you see after the fact. Sometimes I feel like YouTube's going to delete my entire channel for sharing some of the silliness that I share. And sometimes I think a lot of this off-the-cuff way that I present things to you, you think that, well, it's like you're viewing me like I don't know who I'm talking with. I know exactly who I'm talking with. I'm talking with my friends, talking with my family. And the only thing that's happening with that, though, right now is that I'm not hearing anything back in response. And I'm kind of concerned with the way that we discuss things. I'm kind of concerned with the way that we purchase items as one-time use disposable items, even something as fancy as a lightsaber that can be made out of ideal materials, that can be harvested in ways that make sense, that can be sent back to the manufacturer whenever there's a failure, that can be remanufactured to have purpose. I have concern that we don't talk about these things a little bit more frequently, a little bit more easily. I have concern that we're losing a sense of responsibility. I have concern that we're losing respect for the artistry that goes into some of the segments that we actually really appreciate. If you don't appreciate the beauty of this item, that's okay, someone else will. This knife is called the Foray, in case I haven't mentioned it before. My name is Ray. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for liking this video. Thanks for commenting. And thanks, Benchmade, for making a knife for me, Foray. Have a great day. Peace, love, and all that old school stuff.